Notre Dame's 23-10 victory over Georgia in the Sugar Bowl advances the Fighting Irish to the Orange Bowl. How weird is that? Notre Dame's played a Sugar Bowl and an Orange Bowl within a week of each other. I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley and John Bryce, and this is Irish Illustrated Insider, January 5th. We are 4 days removed from Notre Dame taking on Penn State. Let's talk about Notre Dame, Georgia first, and we'll jump into the Nittany Lions, but Notre Dame wins 23-10. I've said this multiple times now, led by double digits throughout the entire second half. It didn't always feel like it because you did not want to get to that point where Georgia was within one score, but Notre Dame held them off. And now it's on to Penn State. But guys, let's put a wrap on Notre Dame over Georgia, which is in the grand scheme of things, a pretty monstrous win for the University of Notre Dame, considering it had been 31 years since they had won a major bowl.
It was huge. It was a season. It was kind of a microcosm of the season. Notre Dame played a great defense and a quality offense and scratched and clawed for everything they could get. I think I heard Sean McDonough say 246 yards is the lowest yardage total to ever win a playoff
Yeah.
game. That makes sense. It's different though when Georgia only had 296 as well. Turnovers, man, turnovers and special teams. It's like Lou Holtz was out there. Other than not enough offense, it's like Lou Holtz had his imprint on that football game. That was fantastic to see. Jaden Harrison's delayed gratification was 100% worth it. RJ Oben's one shining moment. He probably needs a second shining moment. But as JB said, he's already remembered and already part of Irish lore. Think of how big of a part of Irish lore he will be if they win the next one because he helped make it possible.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've said. Jaden Harrison and R.J. Oben now have singular memories that will last in Notre Dame football lore. I think that's incredible. That's once again testament to Chad Bowden and the Notre Dame personnel department when you look at their thumbprints on that game Saturday night, and that's taking absolutely nothing away from the Notre Dame coaching staff. I've made it clear that was a headset win and a win on the field. And one thing I do want to share with folks is that I heard from two different SEC folks over the weekend, including a former high-ranking member of the Georgia football program who told me, quote, not a fluke, the Irish were better. So I wanted to share that. Thought that was pretty interesting, and I will reiterate my favorite stat about this team, and they are the best this year in college football. I would like to have the historical perspective to know where they rank all time, but what they do in the middle eight is the Elite Eight, 145-10 through 14 games. So think about that. They're outscoring their opponents on average 14 and a half to less than one every single game in the moments right before and right after halftime.
And my stat for today is the 100, and I wasn't aware of this till I watched the broadcast, is it 142 points scored after turnovers, which leads the nation by a vast amount, which is pretty incredible. The other one that's pretty wild to think of is that Notre Dame has defeated a ranked opponent in 6 straight months.
That's a
That's
funny
how
one.
long of
Only team to ever do it. It's pretty funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty incredible. And again, we've said this, 17 points in a 54-second span turned the game in Notre Dame's favor. And like I think we all were all interacting at halftime at the Superdome, and you're thinking, wow, Notre Dame's in a good spot. And I said, and they get the opening kickoff, they can march down and score. They didn't have to march. Jaden Harrison did all the marching, and quickly it's 20-3. And it's almost like it's too good to be true, but yet you still have, just shy of 30 minutes to go. And there were some harrowing experiences there, and it took some gutsy decisions by Marcus Freeman. But he's done that all year, and we said he'd stay true to form, and he did. And there's no reason to think he will do otherwise with Penn State coming up. Let's talk about injuries, fellas. Tim and I stopped by the football practice here today. I know everybody wants answers about Jeremiah Love and Howard Cross III. They practiced, or they were in the process of starting practice while we were allowed in. Jeremiah Love had a brace on his right knee. He was running through some of the individual position drills, certainly not at full speed, but that's how we saw him earlier prior to the Indiana game as well, or I should say prior to the Georgia game. I think he was actually he was in a little better shape, of course, by then. And then Howard Cross with a big boot on not a big boot, but heavily bandaged left foot, which is how he played the game the other night too, before he aggravated the injury. Here's the way I'd put it, guys. I'll throw it to you. The point is not, are they going to play? I think they're certainly both going to try to play. I think, but my opinion is that Howard Cross is in a much better position to play, contribute significantly in a positive way, because he's more of a in the trenches guy that doesn't have to run and cut and leap over people like Jeremiah Love does. I'm interested to hear what your perspective is on those two guys.
Well, I mean, completely agree. Howard Cross can manage the pain and play maybe a few fewer snaps because of the injury, with Rubio gaining trust and Heinisch playing great. He'll be in there. He'll fight through it, and it'll hurt the whole time, but he's used to that. Jeremiah Love has a knee brace on, and he's the most explosive one of the most explosive athletes in the country, and he won't be the most explosive athlete in the country until we see him again in the spring. Jeremiah Love will not be Jeremiah Love until you see him again in the spring. He's not capable of that right now, but if he can give Notre Dame some quality, tough, hard-earned carries, be a guy out there that you have to account for, he'll lead the block for Riley Leonard as well as anybody in the world. I'm sure that if that's his number one role, he'll be great at it. But he's hurt the knee twice in a month. He had 20 days the last time. Now he has 6 days. He's not going to be the same thing, but he'll be out there. He's tough as hell.
Yeah, I thought it looked pretty stiff today. The knee, the brace that Love had on his right knee. I think he'll definitely be limited. But this staff has proved that, along with their sports science and their medical crew, that they know how to work load management. They know how to help these guys rehab. You can bet Jeremiah Love will get around the clock treatment between now and Thursday night. And that's the beauty of it, is that this game is falling when there aren't any classes. So this is football camp, but in season style football camp. That's a good thing. That lets him live in the training room as much as he wants to. Was it Cross's left ankle?
Left.
Okay,
Left.
all right. I was confused on that. I did want to note, because I was also at practice today, Josh Burnham, the same wrap on his right ankle, right ankle, God, stumbling over my words, that Cross had on his left ankle. So there's another one that I noticed there on the defensive line, who also had a heavy wrap on his foot. Now, Burnham was moving better than Cross, but Cross was moving much better than we even saw him in the locker room after the game Thursday night.
Hey, JB, it was Burnham's, which ankle for Burnham this time?
Right ankle for Burnham.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm verifying now, he was left ankle, the one that he hurt against Northern Illinois. So that's actually almost good news, because that was such a bad ankle sprain. This is like a new thing to manage. It's probably better.
JB, I apologize. Of course, you were at practice. I was thinking in terms of interviews a little bit later.
No big deal. No big deal.
Yeah. So, and last thing about this, and then we'll move on to Penn State here a little bit. But I mean, I think Jadarian Price and Neas Williams can do just fine as the top two backs in this game, and it's likely going to have to be that. I know that there has been some give at times to the middle of that defensive line for Penn State, and I think that they can hold up. It's crazy how we talk about running backs today that 10, 12 carries, 14 carries in a game. There are a few backs out there. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty is a heavy workload guy, but I think if you bump up Price's carries, look, he showed against USC when Love went out. Price took a starring role. When Love went out against Georgia, it wasn't a starring role because Notre Dame struggled so much to get rushing yards outside of Riley Leonard, but he did some really, really positive things. And so are him and Williams going to be as spectacular as Jeremiah Love? Probably not. But I think that duo can be quite capable and can be productive against Penn State.
And let's not forget that Penn State has a massive injury question as well, and that's Abdul Carter. And we don't know his status, but I've had a number of people asking me about, a number of people from around the country. And if Abdul Carter can't play or is incredibly limited, then I think that's about as significant as the Jeremiah Love situation for Notre Dame. You can make an argument more so.
If you saw him leave the field against Boise State, I think it was about the 10:30 mark of the second quarter, the way that left arm was dangling, presumably a shoulder injury, then he's compromised. He's compromised as well, and that's key because that guy is a really spectacular football player. Yeah, we have a tendency to just focus in on what's happening with Notre Dame, but that's a massive injury for Penn State.
Yeah, James Franklin said at this point, I don't think there's anything stopping him from playing, but it's going to come down to how is he able to play. So that's the same thing as Jeremiah Love, and less so Howard. I mean, he's going to play. He's going to get some help too and play. My thing with Price and Aeneas Williams is I think they'll do a great job. I mean, there's a reason Jeremiah Love's the differentiator of the country that he is, and part of it is he is a violent physical runner, and Jadarian Price is going to have tremendous ball security, keep that tucked in, and think Aeneas Williams becomes your short yardage runner where he was a lot during the year, but Jeremiah Love was the one in the big moments, and that's what they have to replace.
Well,
So
but
that's
every
Riley Leonard too. But
yeah, every time Williams has been in that situation, he's been slippery. He breaks
he's
tackles.
good at it. Yep.
He's
Yeah,
very
and he
good at it.
runs with a good low center
Really
of
does.
gravity and pad level. And let's not ignore the fact that Jadarian Price is coming out of the game where he earned the toughest yards of his career,
He
and
sure did.
he proved what we've known. But his top end speed is SEC speed. He caught the edge on Georgia more than once, and that was a very fast Georgia defense. And Jadarian Price creased them a few times.
As we look at Penn State, I mean, I've been spending a lot of times looking at them and studying the statistics. Man, I tell you what, statistically, again, for what it's worth, going against Big Ten competition, there aren't many weaknesses on this team. They're essentially in the top 30 in virtually every category that's out there. They have not blocked a kick. That I do know. They have not blocked a kick, so they're not as adept at that as Notre Dame is. But there's no doubt that the hiring of offensive coordinator Andy Kolonicki from Kansas has made a significant difference. There's a couple things, and this was something that I saw, and this is something I saw watching them, but also what was emphasized by Urban Meyer in an interview that I saw, and this was before the season. And he said three things that Kolonicki does as an offensive coordinator real well. He makes sure that his offense has a downfield threat. He will take shots on you. He will keep you honest. And that's why Kansas was excellent at downfield shots. And they have Drew Eller, their quarterback, who is very capable of throwing that. The second thing is, they do play option football, not to the extent that Notre Dame does, because he's not that kind of runner, but he is certainly capable of running. And they have two excellent running backs in Katron Allen, who is a Audric Estime type back, a really talented back, and then Nicholas Singleton, who's got a little bit more zip. And then the third thing that Marcus Freeman mentioned the other day is, the use of various personnel groupings and formations, which are hard to handle. So this is a excellent offensive coordinator that is going to challenge Al Golden in ways that Georgia couldn't, partly because Mike Bobo is not as good of a coordinator as Kolonicki is, and secondly, because they had an inexperienced quarterback.
I'm impressed with Aller in the bigger games. I know statistically he was not great against SMU, but I thought Aller played his best against Oregon when they needed to get loose a little bit offensively to keep up. And I also thought his toughness showed against Ohio State. Just statistically, he's better than you think he is throwing downfield. If you break down like Pro Football Focus breaks down over 20 yards and over 10 yards. His over 10 and over 20-yard throws, he's over 53% passer with 19 touchdowns and 5 picks. That is downfield passing these days. And it's broken up pretty well. A lot of that's mid-range stuff, but if he's on, it's going to be a real challenge for Notre Dame's defense. If they bother him, he's a vulnerable quarterback too.
Yeah, and I think that to your point, he is very effective downfield passing. He's proved pretty accurate, really downfield, and not made a lot of bad mistakes. He's among the quarterbacks with the fewest interceptions anywhere in college football the last 2 years combined. His interception numbers have been really good. We've touched on how much more explosive this Penn State offense is. I tried to do a little bit more research on it. So in 13 games of the 2023 season, Penn State only had 47 total explosive plays as defined by them. This year, going into the postseason, so just in their first 12 games, they already had 57. And by the time we do another podcast, I'll have updated it with their last 3 games, because they were great on offense against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. They didn't need a lot of offense against SMU because their defense scored so much. And then they had some chunk plays against Boise State. So Koltelnicki, and I misspoke on our instant analysis from the stadium yesterday. I'll blame the cold weather. But Koltelnicki has been a huge impact. I know Lance Leipold in Kansas just were crestfallen when he left last year, but they certainly understood why. And you saw Kansas miss Koltelnicki this year. So he has made a big impact. And I think I counted, they have 10, maybe 11 players who have recorded an explosive play for them this year. So another thing that Koltelnicki does really well is distribute the ball around.
Tyler Ward, of course, everybody knows about the great tight end from Penn State, 98 receptions, 1,158 yards, just under 12 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns. We talk about the deep shots. The guy that they like to throw those deep shots to is Omari Evans. He's averaging a tick under 20 yards per his 21 receptions. Not a lot of receptions, but 5 scores on a total of 21 receptions. They distribute the football to the running backs, especially Nick Singleton, who has 39 grabs. He's 3rd on the team. So it is a very, very well-rounded football team. We have multiple questions in the second half of our program here in Burning Up the Boards, and so I'll save some of that information. But I just, as we wrap this first segment up, Notre Dame presently is a 2-point favorite. I believe it opened at 1.5 in favor of Penn State. So that has shifted, and it's 46.5 with the over-under. And so it's a little bit higher than what we're looking at with, and I think the potential for scoring in this game is much greater than it was going into the Georgia game. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. Burning Up the Boards, segment 2 is coming up next.
If you're coming to a game this season, you have to check out Game Day Your Way, Notre Dame's tailgate service provider. Game Day offers everything you need, including tailgate gear, catering, and even beverage delivery right to your spot. And their Irish Express transportation from Chicago allows you to tailgate while you travel to their all-inclusive party zone in South Bend. Let Game Day deal with all the hassle so you can focus on the fun. For tailgates, tickets, transportation, and more, visit GameDayYourWay.com.
Welcome back to segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. Our first question from Showtime 22x1. Were you guys down on the field for the trophy presentation? And can you describe the sights and sounds you encountered and the emotions from everyone in the aftermath?
I was. I got somehow ended up, frankly, in the middle of it. Like, I had Notre Dame players rushing past me after the alma mater. I had families of coaches and rushing past me. A few of them stopped and said hello and were just ecstatic. There were a number of tears of joy. One of the neatest moments I saw was BJ Payne, Jalen Sneed's high school coach, who was wearing a personalized Nuke jersey, which of course is Jalen Sneed's nickname. And they embraced right by the trophy ceremony. That was really special, very poignant. You saw guys like Lou Nani down there from Notre Dame. You saw Riley Koval, who's the ace fundraiser on the athletics side for Notre Dame, John Cunningham down there. It was really cool to see, again, the Notre Dame family. And I bring all that up because I got a chance to ask Pete Bavacqua walking off the field after the game about the unity and the direction at Notre Dame. And he said that's a very real thing from the top down. There's as good a unity, and you guys have so much better perspective than I do about that. But I know the entire time I've lived here, the knock has been, is Notre Dame unified? Does the whole campus want Notre Dame football to be successful? I believe very firmly now that it's as great as it's been, certainly in the time that I've lived here.
Yeah, I would, Tim, you and I, Rocco Spindler's dad, Mark Spindler, was pretty fired up
Yeah,
calling down at us
it was the
for
hardest high five I've ever received. I think there was a still
calling
contend
down
they
at
could
us.
they could two gap him for at least 4 plays.
He
If I
was
could, yeah, if I could shameless plug here, we have a photo gallery up on Football Scoop that is incredible, and I'm shameless plugging it because it captures the moments better than our words possibly can. And there's photos in there of Notre Dame players holding their helmets upside down so that they can catch the confetti in them. There's some really special shots of the gold helmets glistening in the confetti. There's a really poignant shot after the game where Riley Leonard goes over to sign this young kid's miniature Notre Dame football helmet, one of the alternate helmets with the shamrock on it, that I just thought was one of the most special images of the whole night.
yeah, I believe it's Mike Reed, who's a long time, I hope I'm getting that correct. Longtime Sugar Bowl official, Notre Dame grad. I saw him embrace Mike Denbrock, him and Mike Denbrock embracing one another. I had an opportunity to spend a second with Denbrock, who I've known for more than 20 years in his third tour of duty at Notre Dame, and he's always been a really good guy and somebody that was really easy to work with. The confetti it was kind of like a snowstorm of confetti. To be caught up in that was pretty cool. I will say, I mean, I think when you add everything up, certainly the players were celebrating, but it was still pretty subdued because I think they know that, look, there's still two more rungs to the ladder here before they can really celebrate. So I thought it was the Notre Dame fans, of course, were ecstatic, but I thought, the team, of course, was enjoying it. But I think they understood that, okay, this is a great accomplishment, but there's more to be done. It's certainly one of those experiences that I will note throughout my long tenure of covering Notre Dame football, because man, it was long, long overdue.
I thought one of my favorite things I saw was because coaches are with their families at that point, and Golden seeking out Denbrock. They probably hadn't had a chance to see each other, and like their embrace and like
Yeah,
great
so
job, man, was
yeah,
a nice one. That was good because that's complimentary football, but you have nothing to do with each other during the game. And that
that's
was a
true.
that was an interesting to see. I think it was Chad Bowden who came. I'm 99% sure, so I'm going to give him credit, quote unquote credit, who came absolutely sprinting out of the locker room while we were already down the field. I don't know where he was during the game to be doing that, but he must have been. He hit a solid 4.6 if that was Chad sprinting out of the locker room to like jump on Gaduli and some of the other guys coming out of there. So that was pretty fun. I actually thought it was. I like to have not the opposite view as Tim, but I was like, wow, there's a lot of emotion here, is how I felt looking at that. And it's part of it is they roll out a trophy presentation and stands to get on. Like it is the culmination. It's supposed to be the culmination, and all of a sudden it's all right. Everybody off the podium, we got a game to play. Let's go. It was a weird feeling to me. I don't say I feel the opposite as you, but I thought there was quite a bit of we slayed the dragon feel to it. That probably is true too. They just have to
Well,
they have to reset when they on the plane. That's fine. But
yeah,
I
I
thought
mean,
they were pretty damn happy.
I think in this instance, both things can be correct. For
Yeah.
example, we were talking to Kristen Gray today, and somebody brought up the significance of beating Georgia 31 years. He had no clue about anything like that. And of course, he wasn't born yet, so I get that. He also had no idea that Al Golden played tight end for Penn State, and he was going to be coaching against his alma mater, and that he scored a touchdown in Notre Dame Stadium in 19. He had no clue of that. So and I think that speaks to Al Golden, who's not a guy to talk about his career or what he did. He's there to coach them. That's his responsibility, and I think that speaks to the level of leadership that he provides.
Yeah,
Question.
I was just going to say, I think in the focus of this team, like they're in the moment, and Marcus Freeman does a fabulous job
Yeah, he really does.
keeping them in the moment.
Yeah, he really does. I guess a question from Statman72, but more of a statement. In the last three games, Notre Dame has had an interception return touchdown of 99 yards, 100 yards, a 98-yard touchdown run, and a 98-yard kickoff return. Is a 98-yard passing TD next. That's a little bit more difficult to come by, especially since the longest pass that Riley Leonard completed the other night was 14 yards.
Yeah, Irish
Uh,
Illustrated subscriber Steve reached out and asked me if we could find out if Notre Dame has ever had a game where it had three consecutive games of touchdowns of 90 or more yards. That's
I find it hard to believe that
I
that would have
wondered
been
if
done.
maybe there was a chance during the Rocket days or the Tim Brown days, if there might have been a combination of passing or kickoff or punt returns for touchdowns or something like that. But I bet that I'm going to ask Alan Wazalewski about it as well. He's great with some of those obscure stats like that. But at first blush, my guess would be probably not.
I'm going to channel my inner Lou Emoji and see if he inspires me enough to put that information in my head.
I'm trying to think about it right now. I bet if it happened, I bet it was in 1989 with Waters and Rocket on the same team. I'll try to figure it out while we sit here and do
But
this.
that's a 3 straight game. That's a
I know.
tough.
Think about the first 3 games, maybe. But anyway, I have an inkling in my head. I'll look it up and make for bad radio while you guys talk on the podcast the rest of this next 30 minutes. But I wanted to talk about if they have a 98-yard pass completion for a touchdown, Notre Dame will win the game.
But the other key thing isn't that
Going away.
touchdowns? 4 touchdowns of 95 plus yards during that 3-game stretch, because they had 2 pick sixes, a 99 and a 100-yard pick six. So it's not just a 3-game stretch, it's 4 touchdowns during that stretch.
Incredible. Question from Turkleton. It appeared to me that Georgia was playing safe on kick defense. They essentially did not even appear to rush on the 3 field goals. Did you see the same thing?
I did. I was stunned. I thought that at least one of the 3, I thought you would see some aggressiveness from Georgia to try to block again, because it's on video there. The digital files are out there. It's been an issue at times this year for Notre Dame. What I attribute that to personally is that they were worried about getting burned by one of Notre Dame's gadget plays.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, that's a mistake though. You got to once Mitch Jeter's kicking, okay, you got to go. Even if he's not, you got to go after that. It's not Mitch Jeter's fault. It's the interior operation. I would go Penn State. I don't think will do that. I think Penn State will attack it. I want to say this now because I don't know if I'll remember it on Tuesday or Wednesday game Thursday. I don't know if I'll remember it on Wednesday. Penn State is going to fake a punt against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's so aggressive. Attacking those punts now. The way to slow that down is to somehow, if they have a shot at all, they're going to fake a punt against Notre Dame.
Now, that's a good call. And I don't know if we can make the direct correlation, but after the second running into the punter, Georgia just declined it.
Yeah, they're afraid to get the third one blocked.
Well, if you watch Kirby during that time, he was so exasperated that they weren't calling roughing the kicker that not only did he decline it, but he just he didn't shove. He gestured the refs away and just said "Oh, enough of this," and didn't want his coverage unit to have third full speed live. He was thoroughly disgusted.
Biaggi was rent-free Biaggi.
The second one was running into the punter. The first one was roughing.
Really? I disagree. I thought the first one was tremendous acting from the Georgia backup.
Well, that usually tends to be roughing when there's tremendous acting, there's not a whole lot of discerning officials who are like, well, it looked like he put a little pirouette into his fall. But I was annoyed at the second one when they declined it. I was like, wow, okay, I guess I shouldn't be as annoyed as I was.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get into some more Notre Dame versus Penn State specific stuff here. Question from Bobby1556. USC was able to rush for 189 yards and 7.9 yards per carry versus Penn State this season. How was USC able to do that? Was it just a bad game for the Nittany Lions? It would seem Notre Dame has a better line and backs than USC. Is there any way Notre Dame can have a similar performance on Thursday?
I think, remembering back to that game, that I think a lot of that was because USC got Penn State off balance very early and built a big lead. I think USC was up 24-7 in that contest. I need to double check. Frankly, it never should have gone to overtime. USC was the better team that day, and Penn State found a way to win it. And that's when when USC was inventing ways to lose football contests. But I remember watching that game very intently, and USC just blitzed them early, got out to a really big lead. And I think that's, as much as anything, what helped them run so effectively.
Pretty sure you were talking about this while we were waiting for
I mean, Woody, I haven't drawn all the numbers together yet, but Woody Marks had a big day, and he's a big, powerful, dangerous running back for USC, and he did some damage to him. Notre Dame caught a bit of a break when he suffered the injury early in the game in Los Angeles, but that's what it was, and that's that's a little that's considerably atypical because at the end of the day, um, Penn State is giving up their eighth in the country in rushing defense and eighth in yards per carry. But again, I think there's enough video evidence out there that would indicate that if you can avoid Abdul Carter and you can get some push on the middle of that Penn State defensive line. Again, there are not too many weaknesses with Penn State, and I'm not even sure that I put it in the category of weakness, but I think it might be something that Notre Dame can attack, and that's why you would like the physicality of Jeremiah Love. But again, I think Jadarian Price and Aeneas Williams can provide some of that.
So
Yeah,
these are
and
the go ahead.
I
Nick,
just
go ahead.
want to say real quickly on that USC game, the Quentin Joyner kid had a 75-yard
Yeah.
run for USC that went for a house call. And so on the one hand, if you're Notre Dame, you think, okay, if you can get presumably Jadarian Price in the right spot, we know he has breakaway speed. But that means that the rest of the day, USC had 23 rushes for 114 yards, which is far closer to the norm against Penn State. So those numbers are a bit skewed by Joyner's 75-yard house call, and then also the fact that USC got a nice lead early on and then went conservative or whatever.
If you want to dig into this, they only had 2 runs other than that run. 75-yard runs count, as we know from watching Jeremiah Love. They only had 2 runs of 15 yards that whole day against Penn State. 6 more first downs rushing only. And according to Pro Football Focus, 3 missed tackles by Penn State the whole game against the running backs. So that one run was a pretty damn big thing, and one of the missed tackles was on his run. So that doesn't sound like a team that got beat up on the run very much.
No.
Yeah, and you look at that game, Penn State had 28 first downs to USC 16. So it was, it was their activity came early. The other thing was that USC was 2 for 11 on third down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all things being equal on the road, that's probably something USC should have been able to finish out, but they weren't putting up huge numbers that day. I should say some of those numbers are just they're a little bit deceiving.
Next question from Blue Chip Man. How big a factor is it that Penn State has 2 more days of rest and Indy is coming off a more physical game in playing Georgia?
As you pointed out, John, the other day, Penn State's played an extra game. So, I don't know. As we were thinking about it and talking about in New Orleans, because of the postponement of the game and pushing it back a day, it seems significant. And I still think it is significant, but at this stage, Notre Dame is so dialed in. They've played one less game. You know how Marcus Freeman is. He's not going to use it as an excuse. In fact, he's going to say, "Hey, great, we played more recently. We're more game ready because we played more recently than they did."
Yeah, for me, I think that, yeah, Boise State doesn't remotely compare to Georgia from a physicality standpoint, but that was a physical contest. They were very committed to running Ashton Genty, and we know he eventually got over 100 yards because of how many carries he had. I don't think the 2 days is a huge difference. It would be a huge difference to me if Notre Dame was unfairly being asked to play on 5 days rest instead of 7 days rest. And we occasionally see some teams that play a Saturday game followed by a Thursday night game during the course of the college football regular season. I also point to the fact that Notre Dame's been pretty smart this season and been able to rest dudes a lot in the second half of games. So I don't have all the snap counts in front of me. O'Malley is a master at that and having that kind of data handy. But I do think that Notre Dame has been very cognizant of the potential for an extended path and especially managed its workload over the month of November.
I was concerned about the clear Georgia Notre Dame pounding that they were going to inflict on each other. I think I'm in the minority. I think mentally is the challenge. I actually think Notre Dame was incredibly high after that game, and I know they've talked about coming down from it, and they probably have. I just feel like Notre Dame's program invested a hell of a lot into beating the SEC champion in that game. And I'm looking forward to seeing them bounce back from it, because this is different than handling success, because it's not exactly like I mean, they are. Marcus Freeman just said we're getting patted on the back more than we ever have in our entire lives. Now, it's pretty easy to focus for Penn State. They're not playing a MAC team, as the fun joke goes. But I think the emotional toll on Notre Dame is stronger than on Penn State, and I think it would be great if Notre Dame would have had an extra day or so to. I'm not sugarcoating at all. I think it's much tougher for Notre Dame to go play this game than Penn State.
No, I would agree with that. I also think, the back slapping, they're not in school. They're, they're pretty much,
Social media
contained.
backslapping. Yeah, get off
Yeah,
of it.
well, yeah, you do have that too. They're contained unto themselves right now. But Tim, I mean, there's no doubt. You better come prepared. You better come prepared emotionally to play Georgia, and they did, and they matched it, and they went beyond what Georgia had to offer. I'm not discounting it, because that was something that we were immediately talking about. Like, we started talking about, would they change the game? Would they flip flop or whatever? And of course they weren't in a position to do that. So you have to be cognizant of that fact. But it is what it is. And so you pick up look, you're in the Final Four. You got all the motivation.
I'm much more cognizant of Jeremiah Love not being Jeremiah Love
Yep,
than I am of Notre
exactly.
Dame being emotionally invested in the Sugar Bowl. But it's, it all exists. So
One more quick thing just to wrap up the Quentin Joyner run, just because I rewatched it while we were sitting here. And so it was a jet sweep fake reverse, and the Penn State defense bit on it. And USC blocked it incredibly well on the left side of the line and gave him a crease. And then one Penn State DB had an angle on him inside the 10 and couldn't make an ankle tackle, and that's how he scored. So.
Yeah, why did this gets back to USC has a good offensive line. They have a good offensive line.
Well, they had top end speed in some spots too. Like we said, they had guys that could play for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Question from Coach Aguilar: thoughts and ideas on how Al Golden may approach Penn State's offense? Does the match of OC versus DC favor Notre Dame as much as Bryce thought in the Georgia matchup? Boy, I wish.
I think Kotelnicki is a much better OC than Mike Bobo, but I'm not. The only game that I think would be a stalemate from OC versus the Notre Dame defensive brain trust would probably be Ohio State, because I think Chip Kelly is really damn good. Probably Texas, because Sark is pretty much a genius play caller. But in this game, Kotelnicki's good. I still think Al Golden has an advantage there, not as pronounced as I would say if I could. I proved to be accurate about Golden versus Mike Bobo.
Yeah, that's the whole thing for me is I don't think he's going to change his structure too much. I know we have. I hope I'm not walking over a question. I saw a question on our board about, do you help Christian Gray more? I think you trust Christian Gray. I think you trust what Xavier Watts and your safeties can do against the best tight end in the country. I think you trust Jack Kaiser and Jaden Osbury a little. You could try to find a way not to get Drake Bowen matched up with the best tight end in the country, but that's pretty obvious, right? I'm not ripping on Drake Bowen. He's a Mike linebacker. Don't get a freshman like KVA matched up with him. You got to be a little cognizant of it, but. Yeah, they're one of the best D's in the country. They're down for some guys on that best D in the country, and they looked like the best D in the country the last time they played.
Yeah, and Christian Gray, look, he got burned once, and then he played much better over the balance of that game against Georgia. They absolutely tried to pick on him a lot more after they got him once, and there was no real success there.
The mistake that Gray made on that play was he looked back. He looked back to Arian Smith.
He's one of the fastest people in the country.
And
Correct.
then looked back the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think Smith, that's when it was decided that, he was going to beat him, and the ball was thrown perfectly. Christian Gray, look, he's a cornerback, man. Christian Gray has bounced back really, really well since the USC game. And as pointed out in the tail of tape after USC, Gray was playing really well in the first half until the end of the half when he got beat in front of along the USC sideline. Then he had the interference, and it kind of snowballed for a while. But corners are going to get beat, man. I mean,
Especially when you play man to man. If you love
well,
Notre Dame's
right.
aggressiveness, you better get ready to beat people.
Bo Collins beat Georgia's best corner for a touchdown. That stuff's going to happen. But the concern here is that Kolonicki is going to he's got to take deep shots, and he's going to do it with is it Omari Evans, and so you're going to have to make a play. You're going to have to run with him.
This is obviously can be tweaked, but most of the successful deep shots by Penn State this year are actually down the middle, down the hashes, which is interesting because there's a certain guy that roams that area that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's Watts Island.
All right, we have a question from Martin Evenflow. Which of these three stats is most important to beating Penn State? One being +1 in turnover margin. Two, I'm losing my space here. Two, holding Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton to less than 100 yards combined rushing. Or three, holding Tyler Warren under 70 receiving yards.
Not three, because I think Warren could have a really good day with six touchdowns. That would be a really good day. 6 first downs and 70 receiving yards. So
Bite your tongue.
+1 would be, +2 is the obvious answer. Junior Tuihalamaka talked about it today. They want +2 against everybody. If the other team gets a turnover, that means they have to get a third turnover. That's how Al Golden and the defense operate. I'd probably sign up for 100 yards rushing out of Allen and Singleton, though, right now. I would sign up for that right now.
Yeah,
Penn State can rush for 100 yards with those guys and 12 with Drew Aller. Let's go.
I think for me it's turnover margin. Like if
Plus
you're at
one's
least
not great. I want +2. It's my
yeah,
turnover margin.
but to me, if Notre Dame is plus in the turnover margin,
Yep.
I like even more its likelihood of winning the contest. So that's first and foremost for me.
Mine would definitely be two. Katron Allen's really, really good. As I mentioned, I mean, he is estimate-like at times. I really think as much as I love Nicholas Singleton's game, containing Katron Allen is more important. And again, it's not a direct comparison because Georgia didn't run the football well going into the game. We knew that. But Marcus Freeman, I almost said Marcus Allen. Marcus Freeman, maybe because I'm talking about Katron Allen.
Probably because we are talking about Herschel Walker last week.
Marcus Aurelius. So.
Marcus Freeman said, and the players were saying the same thing. We've got stopping the run is first and foremost, because if you do that, there's a great deal of trust in the Notre Dame pass defense. Did they get beat a couple times? Yeah. Again, that is going to happen. We always get these questions about, hey, this guy got open, they hit a big play. What did they do wrong? How can they solve this? Other teams make plays sometimes, even against great defenses. I'd pick number 2 though, and I'd especially like to see Katron Allen kept in contained as much as possible.
From VA Doc 88, do you expect more snaps or an expanded pass rush role for Viliamu Asa against Penn State? Will the rotation change much for what we expect from Penn State's offense?
John?
He looked good. He looked explosive for them. I think, what was it? He had about a dozen plays and pretty much was a pass rusher on all of those. I think, as good as he looked in that game and seemingly came out of it very healthy, you can probably expect a little bit more for him. I think he's very valuable in run defense because of the way he fits the runs. And because, again, I've talked about it since watching him almost exactly a year ago to the day in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl, just how instinctive he plays the game. So can you get 15 or 18 snaps out of him this week? I think that would be a win for Notre Dame.
I'd like to see Viliamu Asa coming off the edge again because he's really good at it. And I'd like Madden Fremo to be inserted to defend Tyler Warren, but he won't be available. So I think Viliamu Asa is as good of a matchup as you're going to find, right? At linebacker for Tyler Warren.
I don't.
Why is that?
I don't think I like Viliamu Asa in coverage coming off the injury right now.
No way.
Well,
I don't like that. I want Jaden Osbury involved more on Tyler Warren, and I want Viliamu Asa going at the quarterback in game number 2 healthy, where he can get there and make a play.
Yeah,
I think Viliamu Asa would struggle greatly against.
Yeah, I want Osbury or Kaiser.
You guys are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I'm thinking Viliamu Asa at full strength, but regardless of that,
Yeah,
Jay
he's not
Jay
there.
Nosbury is the matchup. You're absolutely right. Wrong statement on my part. Question from R. You already asked? No, you didn't.
Nope. Nope.
Okay, RV Mitra 12. This is an interesting one. That's why I included it. How do you compare? How do you compare the following positions? Georgia versus Penn State defensive lines.
I think,
I side with Marcus Freeman and I go Georgia's defensive line.
yeah,
I would
that's,
say Georgia. I would say Georgia. Georgia versus Penn State's linebackers.
I think Abdul Carter is the X
Yeah, I
factor.
think a healthy Abdul Carter, but he's not as healthy.
Right.
Yeah, and
I mean, I
I
had two
consider him.
All-Americans from those lines, from those linebackers. I'm saying I had three All-American linebackers. That's two of them, Georgia and Penn State. So
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I consider him more DN though. I mean, he's
I do too. But he
yeah.
does. God, he does everything. Yeah.
No, I know he does. He
Yeah.
because that's how good of an athlete he is.
Yeah.
But I mean, are you that? I mean, the inside linebackers for Georgia. I would take Georgia's linebackers.
They were good.
Yeah,
they were good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're killers.
Yes, they are. They are.
Yeah. Okay. Georgia versus Penn State's defensive backs.
Georgia.
I mean, yeah, Georgia was. I mean, Jaden Harrison on that slant route, they tried to get him involved, or that drag route. He was wearing a player. It was like it was. I didn't know. I thought he adopted a red jersey. They were all over Notre Dame's receivers. I think I'm worried about Notre Dame's receivers starting with last game going into the rest of the games they have to play this year because I don't think
Absolutely.
they're going to get open that much.
No, absolutely true.
Yeah.
I would choose Georgia's defensive backs.
I would too. Yeah, the linebacker thing. It's kind of where you put Abdul Carter. So it's like front seven. I front seven. Penn State or Georgia. That's how you got to do it.
Okay, I'm getting to a point here because this doesn't, and then we only have one more, and that's
Okay.
Georgia versus Penn State's offensive line.
Penn State.
Not even
Penn
close.
State.
Not even close.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there are 4 questions asked. There are 3 of them in Georgia's favor. My point being, do not, based upon that, do not be complacent and think that, oh, well, Notre Dame beat Georgia, and so Penn State is not going to be as difficult. We only, I mean, we're not.
I would say Notre Dame won't beat Penn State.
Quarterback play, would be in favor of Penn State. Penn State is a better, they're a more well-rounded,
Offense.
they're solid in more categories than Georgia is, largely because of of Georgia's offensive line.
Yeah.
And they had a young quarterback.
And they have better running backs and a better tight end.
Not asked, but I'd take Andy Kotelnicki over Mike Bobo.
Well, and so throw that in. So that's what I'm saying. Our answers, I don't want people to be complacent thinking, oh, well, then Penn State's not going to be easy.
I think one way to look at it, Tim, is if let's say Notre Dame gets 50 more yards of total, or let's say they get 80 more yards of total offense, that might not be enough. So that's why I wouldn't just say they had 240 yards of offense. If they get 320 yards of offense, I'm not sure they're going to win. So you need a much better performance offensively than you had against Georgia against Penn State's defense. Georgia's D played great. Great.
Yeah.
They were great. They have a 13-yard touchdown drive on one play. They were fantastic.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but Penn State's really good.
Yeah. And I think Penn State's offense is flowing right now.
Again,
they have a good offense right now.
Yeah, and again, that's why they're in the Final Four. But I look, and every game's different, I mean, every game's different. The more I look at Penn State, and I like Georgia, but I mean, I have to say, as I sit here right now, I was more confident. If you remember what I said right before the game in instant analysis, I was more confident that Notre Dame was going to beat Georgia than I am in Notre Dame beating Penn State right at this moment. There's 4 days till then. There's more to see, but they're a good football team, and Kotelnicki is an excellent offensive coordinator. And as you point out, John, Tom Allen's done a great job with Penn State's defense too. So two different animals. And we'll move on to the next step and just see how Notre Dame can handle the Nittany Lions.
And I'm sorry, I did walk over this question. Go fight, win Irish. Did you see Al Golden changing up his defense to help Christian Gray? It seems the MO for attacking Indy through the air is through Gray, either getting a completion or a penalty. I mean, to be fair, the reason that is you can't attack Leonard Moore because he looks like Mike Haynes out there playing defense for people that are very old. Yeah.
And Christian Gray has won way more battles in the last 2 games against Indiana and Georgia than he's lost.
Yeah. His hard game was USC. I spaced out the way you said that. Yeah, I was gonna say he didn't win more battles, but no, the USC game was the one that beat him. He's done I have a lot of faith in Christian Gray. It's just
I do
it's a
too.
hard job.
We just spoke to him a little bit earlier this afternoon. I was walking out. I said to Eric Hansen, "How do you not love that kid?" I mean, he just, he's got a great deal of confidence. Every time he walks in the room, we talk about the length of him and Leonard Moore. Not that it's not that he's 6'3". It's just that he's just has a great cornerback frame that he utilizes very well. I have a lot of confidence in Christian Gray. And you look, you have to when you're a corner, and you've got to be oblivious to bad things happening to you.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, and I think he's done a really, really good job of doing that, especially since the USC game.
Yeah, he has a presence about him, and you're right. When you're a corner, you have to have every down amnesia.
He's getting a little grabby.
Well, yeah, he tends to grab up by the. It's a good
Yeah,
place.
I
It's a
know
good
that.
place to grab. It impedes the
Well,
receiver when you
I
grab.
know because I sat with Mickens in the summer for a film review, and I know that the teaching is the inside arm bar low, so the refs don't see it. So the upper inside shoulder is not what
The
they're
whole
teaching.
world sees it then,
You
right?
gotta be yeah, the whole world sees that.
Yeah,
But then again, if you're not exactly in phase as they call it, or Chuck Martin used to call it, I'm not sure Mike Mickens calls it that, but if you're not in phase, you necessarily can't get to the lower arm because the guy might be a half a foot past you, in which case
yeah.
you have to grab his jersey. But the grabbing of the top of the jersey is
Yeah.
officials look for that, man.
A couple of Harrison Wallace the third is the second leading receiver for Penn State. He's caught 46 passes, just shy of 16 yards per catch. He's been productive. I mentioned Omari Evans and his near 20-yard, receptions. But I mean, I don't think it's a great receiving core. They do have a better than great tight end. There's no doubt about that. But I'd like to match up. Hey, I don't, I meant to check. Julian Fleming from Ohio State plays for Penn State.
No,
I think did he get injured? Because I haven't seen in the later games in the season, I didn't see his name. So, uh,
Harrison Wallace the third sounds like he's a Cornell transfer, so I like my chances of Leonard Moore against Harrison Wallace the third, but I know he's not, so that's
well, he has about 200 yards more receiving than any
oh
Notre Dame
well. I
receiver.
was just about
So,
to say stats and Notre Dame receivers don't mix, so let's not go there.
all right, we're going to wrap up today with a question from ND Dan 106. Many have felt for a long time that Penn State shouldn't be ranked higher than Notre Dame in the CFP rankings, meaning they felt Notre Dame was a better team. What, if anything, gives you pause in picking Notre Dame to win this game?
Just the health of Notre Dame, the question mark status of Jeremiah Love, and whether or not you can even get him 8 to 12 touches. To me, right now, as we sit here, 5 days out from the game, 4 days out from the game, whatever it is. The game's Thursday. I know that, O'Malley.
Today's fake Tuesday is all you need to remember.
Yeah. For me, it's can Notre Dame get 8 to 12 high quality touches for Jeremiah Love, and then how fully effective is Howard Cross given the Riley Mills injury. At the time, we so heavily discounted that Penn State was seeded way too generously. That was healthy Riley Mills. We knew Howard Cross was coming back after an extended layoff, presumably as healthy as he'd been. And Jeremiah Love was getting 20 days off from USC to be ready for IU. So that's the elements that I'm looking at the most, but I don't care. I'm picking Notre Dame.
A very well-rounded football team on both sides of the football. Again, the stats speak for themselves. Um, I said a lot of the positives because that's what I do. I analyze the opponent and I try to get that out there so people understand what Notre Dame's going against. I also know they're going against a head coach that hasn't won a lot of big games. And Marcus Freeman has won against a ranked team for 6 straight months.
He's a real prince of a guy to talk to, it seems like, too.
Yeah, yeah. And he's always spoken so highly of Notre Dame and their desire to remain independent.
Yeah, these conference champions are doing awesome, so he should just keep worrying about himself a little bit, I think. But Jeremiah Love is my number one cause for pause. Jeremiah Love is my number two cause for pause. Penn State's offense being better than it was when I used to watch them earlier in October, November is my number three. I like Penn State's offense now. I like the running backs. I like Warren. Aller's good trigger man for it. Number four is I'm going to go back to what Priester said. was a great point. JB and I didn't disagree with you, but we didn't hammer it home properly like you did. Riley Mills is missing for the second straight
Well,
game.
that's what I was just going to say. I mean,
Riley Mills is
did,
missing for another game, and
right.
Howard Cross is also a little bit
it,
less.
it did not show up against a very average Georgia offensive line. I consider Penn State's offensive line a very good one. They're three. I think it's 348 at their right guard spot. I like Nolan Rucci at right tackle. He plays a cat and mouse game with pass rushers. The guy on the left side, I think, has been pretty effective. I like their offensive line. I didn't like Georgia's offensive line. So this might be where not having Riley Mills is that bridge too far that
I think Jeremiah Love is the bridge too far. And
that's
I
true.
think Price and Williams are great. Did I say this on the air between segments? All right, let's say Tyler Warren's not playing. You go, yeah, but Penn State's got really good backup tight ends. All right, throw them out there. Let's go. We'll play with the backup tight ends instead of Warren, and Notre Dame will play with Price and Linus Williams. Love is one of the best players in the country. And he's Notre Dame's difference maker.
Their backup tight end is a blocker.
Yeah, we'll put him in. Let's see it. We'll play Price. They can play him.
No, what I'm saying is they don't. The other tight end, they're not throwing to him.
I know.
He has a few. He has 12 catches, but they're not going to feature him in the passing game. His job out there is to block, and he's done a really good job. So good football team. We'll continue to analyze this matchup. Let me say that I absolutely think that Notre Dame can win this football game, and we'll talk about it more on Wednesday, the day before, when we are all gathered in Miami. Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley, John Bryce. This has been Irish Illustrated Insider.